We are here on From the Wing. Adam McCrary, Steve Jones, and the NBA trade deadline is insane. It is insane. Steve is coming at you from New York in a hotel room that he has fashioned up a space and met me very early to render a verdict on what is we'll save the details for when we get into the trade. A lot of stuff going on. Luka, De'Aaron Fox, Jimmy Butler, now Brandon Ingram to Toronto for stuff. And we're going to get into all that. First off, a quick, hey, how you doing, Steve?
I'm doing fine. I'm feeling good. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. This trade deadline escalated very quickly. Like Luka Doncic is a Laker, ... You've heard all about that. Moving right along. I'm sure we'll revisit it. And then we had the whole part where everyone just said, that doesn't work for me, brother, for like a good 2.5 days, except for De'Aaron Fox and Zach LaVine were like, cool, we get to go other places. And the Bulls were like, can we have our pick back? And then Kevin Durant got involved randomly, which no one expected. And everyone's like, Golden State's going after KD. And Kevin Durant was like, that doesn't work for me, brother. And so Phoenix was like, well. And then the Kings were like, let's get Jonas Valanciunas. And then the Jimmy Butler domino dropped, which now meant everyone else could knock their dominoes over, including something, Adam, that we have discussed on this very podcast. Since I have joined on, it has been the cloud over the head, the Brandon Ingram trade. I have tried to tempt you with many scenarios and many outcomes and thrown many things your way. They went with the one thing I didn't go with.
Hey, at least it wasn't RJ Barrett. So you did throw RJ Barrett at me, and it didn't go that way. So we're going to get into all that. We are absolutely going to revisit the Luka trade, but we're going to do it in a slightly different way. You've heard enough about, like, was it good? Was it not? Also, we got to throw in, we got a new one. The Lakers got Mark Williams, who I happen to love. So we'll talk about that too. But we have to do a lot of Brandon Ingram stuff. But first, we are brought to you today, as always, by Crescent Canna, New Orleans' #1 cannabis company, and the makers of the highly satisfying Crescent 9 THC seltzer, a hemp-derived THC seltzer that has changed my life. Like, it's just a functional part of my life. Had one at the bar last night. Had one at the bar at Tipitina's with the Levitard crew. And the bartenders were like, hey, you got any of those ones that are over 5 milligrams left that you like bring by? Because, we need the stronger stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I can help you with that one. But they are still available in all of your local grocery stores, Rouse's, Canseco's, all of the places. They're usually near, like, there's usually like a seltzer corner. There's a couple of different little companies. You don't want those. You want Crescent 9. You want to get in there. I'm going to recommend, I know if you like mango, go for the tropical. However, I am a ginger lemonade guy. And, rest in peace, my sour watermelon until it comes back. And they've been a fantastic partner for this show. And I'm just thrilled to have them here and to have that product helping me sleep. Steve, this deadline, we got the move. We got the one. We needed, like you said, it was I hate to put this on Brandon Ingram in this way. It was like a black cloud floating over us, and we probably should lay that at the feet of David Griffin more than anybody else, because I think most people...
What cloud?
A black cloud? Oh, all right. Moving on. All right. That simple? That easy? Okay. We probably need to lay this at the feet of David Griffin more than anybody else. I probably should refrain from as much negative connotation directed Brandon's way as possible, because like this, even though he has had opportunities to sign contracts and has had trade opportunities laid in front of him before this that he did not select, this deal should have been done before now. If you knew all summer you were giving Trey the money, you knew that you were not going to fit Brandon into the plans. You did not get the year last year of him and Zion where you reached a new level where it told you, hey, I can think differently about my future build. You didn't get any of that. Then you didn't move him during the summer. You kind of had the worst case scenario play out over the summer. You hold on to him. He's here to start the year. Zion misses the start of the year. Shante obviously breaks his hand. You never see all the parts line up. And then Brandon gets hurt and he still has not returned. And you're trying to trade him the whole time. And it's just now it's a lost season. Now we're talking about tanking and draft and acquisitions and all of Steve's favorite things. So Brandon has moved. He has moved for Bruce Brown, Steve's favorite player, Kelly Olynyk, the Indiana lightly protected 2026 first, and a future second. And I think that might also be a Pacer second. So that's the return. Brandon Ingram goes and joins RJ Barrett and friends. Initial thoughts, feelings. Obviously, it's a talent swing more than a basketball fit swing. They got a lot of dudes that do very similar things. Talking about Toronto. Obviously, New Orleans, a little different. We'll hit like Toronto gets BI. What do you think of that first? Then give me Pelicans.
You want me to talk about the Toronto Raptors first? I didn't see that one coming. I mean, here's the thing. I'm all about adding talent. I'm sure there are some Toronto fans who are like, hey, why are we trying to get better? Why are we adding people? Why are we going to pay Brandon Ingram? I feel like a lot of copy paste from what I scrolled and saw last night and this morning was thoughts that Adam had or New Orleans fans had that Toronto Raptor fans are now having. I'm like, can we just appreciate Brandon Ingram for a singular moment? Like it's still 25-5 with mid-range shooting and improved playmaking. And no one ever talks about the Brandon Ingram drives except for like me and 6 other people. But it is what it is. We'll talk about that. I think if you're Toronto and, you know, they start comparing Pascal Siakam to Brandon Ingram for Scotty Barnes, slow it all down. You just got Brandon Ingram for Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk in a pick. I don't think that's a bad trade at all for you because you have now Scotty Barnes. And remember, the context has changed. Scotty Barnes was coming up into what was Pascal's team and OG trying to figure himself out. And that little mini core that didn't work into Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Poeltl. I don't feel like that's a terrible starting lineup. I don't feel like that's a bad team. Now, if you want to say, hey, what are we going to do? Brandon Ingram likely would have been the best free agent this year. We can agree.
The free agency class is actually, especially after what just happened, the free agency class looks like it was going to be pretty bad.
And so it's hard. Yeah. It's hard. The trade market is the key. Now a bunch of teams are going to have the space and the flexibility to open up money to get someone in free agency. So why not get that person in your camp now and get that taken care of? You know, I think that's a positive for Toronto. You need to add talent to the room. You need to make a step at some point. And so let's gear up, try and get better next year. This year is what it is. Maybe BI gets healthy. Maybe BI plays. You see how good it is. You see what the contract's going to be. But I don't have a problem with that from the Toronto perspective for me. Like, I just don't think that's a horrific idea.
All right, now let's slide it over to the Pelicans. So I agree with you. In a vacuum, I get it. Like, you just got to take former team context out for Toronto and just think about the deal they made. The deal on its face makes sense. I'm for what I'm paying for. Now, the scary part is the looming extension and the fact that that's an open topic. But you'd assume if Brandon has finally agreed that he would go to one of these places, like if he has finally not like mucked it up, that they have some idea that there's going to be an extension reached. I would be looking for that to be in like the $40 million a year range, which, you know, that's basically the offers he's turned down in the past. I think he would probably take now if they gave him some guaranteed years. So we'll see how that turns out. Now your Pelicans, New Orleans Pelicans have Kelly Olynyk and Bruce Brown and a couple of picks relative to your typical like former all-star deals. Like we just saw a one-time all-star De'Aaron Fox get moved. And the haul for that was Levine and 2 firsts and a fake first and some seconds. It was basically 5 seconds, 2 firsts, and Zach Levine. That's more. That's definitely more. I think the NBA thinks way more highly of De'Aaron Fox right now than they do Brandon Ingram, and especially like style of play, fit, importance of position. So Kelly Olynyk and Bruce Brown, what is this? Should we be getting attached to these players? Should we be investing emotion in Bruce Brown, who I love as a player? This is the grit and grinder, plays for everybody, is never a bad player, who just kind of got himself together in Toronto, like when he beat us the other night.
How's that feel, by the way?
What, getting the guy that kicked our butt like 10 days ago?
Yeah, just curious.
I mean, I love Bruce Brown. I'm trying to talk myself into a world where like there's like a reasonable like 2-year contract extension thing, and he stays here because like I've just always loved Bruce Brown. Like the last 5 years of his career have been very, very good and super interesting.
I would probably say don't get as attached to Bruce Brown. Get attached to the fact that Bruce Brown is an expiring contract, or that maybe someone calls and says, "Hey, do you guys really want Bruce Brown?" Sorry, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. Now, Kelly Olynyk, on the other hand, that should be the interesting one, because I think that is the one where it's like, we talked about Toronto maybe not wanting to go. Like, hey, we have some space. We can use Kelly Olynyk next year with this version of the team. I think Kelly Olynyk plus Zion makes a lot of sense in theory, as far as Zion being able to have someone as a big who can space the floor. He can pick and pop. He can run dribble handoffs, which I think is good considering you have McCollum, Trey Murphy, those type of players in theory. But you can do a lot of the Zion stuff with more space on the floor and not have to worry about that. So I think that's a good complementary piece for next year. You have to rip the Band-Aid off of Brandon Ingram. I guess, you have to responsibly talk about Bruce Brown, the basketball player, and what he could offer. I mean, you could go small. Bruce Brown as a small big has been good with him screening and rolling and opening things up. So that's kind of been a fun part. We know what he can do defensively. If you could convince him to stay, that's not a bad piece. If you look overall at what the team could be next year. So, I mean, you turn one player into two, that's not awful. I guess just the bigger question is, do you feel like it's enough for that? Like, I mean, for me, it was my spidey senses went off when the Pelicans, because we had talked about it. They had to make a move to avoid a certain word that you can't say.
Rest in peace, Daniel Tice.
So when I saw New Orleans call OKC and be like, "Hey, you want a big?" I was like, here we go. So I'll ask you this question. I know I'm supposed to deliver the answers, but do you like the idea of, okay, we have Kelly Olynyk next, or would you rather had more flexibility? Would you have rather had Chris Boucher?
No, Boucher. I think Boucher's an expiring on 10 mil, and I've watched that player play for I guess 2 different coaches, because it was mostly Nick Nurse, and Nick Nurse kind of hated Boucher and kind of played him like only when he absolutely had to. And then he'd get Boucher's like a 3 block, just snag 10 rebounds and get 3 blocks in a game. You're like, why doesn't this dude play every night? And I trust coaches. When coaches don't play you, when they have like plenty of opportunity, when they play Precious Achua over you, I'm just going to assume there's a certain level there, and that's it is what it is. So yeah, I don't love Boucher. Have always kind of loved Olynyk, but have to be honest about the last couple of years and the injuries and like Olynyk slowing down a little bit. He's not quite the guy you remember in Utah in terms of his accomplishments over the last couple of years. However, think back to Utah, think back to Miami. There's a lot to like about what Olynyk is. I think the more interesting thing is, like, if we went back to the summer and it's John Collins versus Olynyk, I'm more intrigued by the upside of John Collins than I am. I don't think there's like an upside play here. Like, Olynyk's older. He's had like real hard miles the last couple of years, but $12 million next year fits in what you're doing. Design wise is like skill wise better than Tice as a fit. Like you got Tice off the street and it didn't look good. So the fact that you're changing that to Olynyk, I think it makes sense. Am I flattered by the value of the deal in a vacuum? No. But we don't live in a vacuum. We live in the last 7 months that included a hypothetical John Collins deal, a hypothetical Herter Barnes deal, which, looking back at the Sacramento thing, that never got really far enough along for Brandon to really be the guy over DeMar. But I know there was definitely some issue there with the Pelicans, like housing Herter and Barnes here. So yeah, it's fine. The verdict is it's fine, and I'm happy that the cloud is lifted and that we can move into the Zion Trey era. I'm like you. When I saw that Tice deal go through, I was like, oh no, they did the tax deal. Nothing else is going to happen. I've been holding out for the BI thing. We had no rumors. This is like immaculate on the agent executive end. We had zero Brandon Ingram talk a week ago. And then in a 3-day period, we had 5 different teams with local sources confirming that they had some level of interest or conversation about Brandon Ingram. And I'm sitting here, and then at the end, the thing that did it for me, the thing that saved me, is about 20 minutes after we get the Tice deal, Mark Stein puts out a piece that says that the Atlanta Hawks and Toronto are neck and neck in the chase for Brandon Ingram. I was like, we did it. It's happening. He's going. And I'm sorry to root it on so much. Like, Brandon did great. This is the terrible part about transactions. Brandon did great things for us. Brandon was the main piece of the AD trade. And we will never forget, like, the closing of the year with the win over the Lakers, and then you get the series against the Suns. You get through the play-in, you get to the Suns. You have an awesome series with the Suns where we like temporarily want Chris Paul to leave this earth. But then, like, I'll never forget that. But we want more, and we want consistency, and we want availability, and we're strapped to Zion. We are married in a way that Dallas apparently was not married to Luka Doncic, and we're definitely going to talk about that. So yeah, that all of that banter is I'm cool with it.
And we're blaming Brandon Ingram because the peak version of Brandon Ingram had no one that was available, aka the partner in the scenario. Anyways, in that timeline, I did want to ask a quick question. So somewhere in between there, and I have a few follow-up questions. Kyle Kuzma was moved for Chris Middleton. Did you breathe a sigh of relief? That could have been you.
Yeah, so I certainly did. I didn't. There was nothing substantive with us and Kuzma, but I like when you looked around to try to figure out how this worked. The more you messed around in the trade machines and everything, the more apparent it became that you needed a Butler thing to happen before a Brandon Ingram thing happened. The size of the salaries and the number of teams that are locked into these aprons, you're sitting there like, okay. If the real hypothetical partners are these 3 teams, what do they have to get off their books? Like, what's realistically got to come off of them for them to want to do this? And every sequence you kept coming up with is like, man, Miami's really got to get off of Butler. Like that shoe has to drop so that the Milwaukees and the Golden States, like these other teams, have made their decision, and you limit the pool. And now the Brandon Ingram option is the last remaining option. So it was good to hear that was how it was cooking. But like, yeah, the Kuzma thing, look, I'm going to throw it this way. I agree with you. So I read your tweets. I think we need to remember that Kyle Kuzma in the third guy context is fine. And Chris Middleton's ankles appear to be cooked. So I understand when I thought we were going to see them, and maybe we still will. I thought we were going to see them add Bogdan Bogdanovic too. Somebody they once signed and then lost, or almost signed. So I'd be curious, like, if they manage to get him in there, they have some stuff left to cobble together. They could cobble together Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton and get Bogdan Bogdanovic in there. You weren't here for this, but once upon a time, I did a funny thing where I called Bojan and Bogdan brothers. I was like, what are they, brothers, cousins, something? Not related at all. So classic line right there. I'd be curious, like the Kuzma thing will make more sense about Milwaukee to me if they also get something else, because just Kuzma flipping for Chris Middleton, I think if I was a Milwaukee fan, I would finally be afraid of the Giannis leaving rumors. They've never been real before now, but like if this Kuzma thing's not good, like you're out of flexibility here. I would be nervous, but I'm glad Kuzma doesn't play here. You're right, I am. Okay. I'm glad it's not. Well, actually, Tim Hardaway. I don't know. Maybe he could have talked me into it. Maybe he's an idea. I'm sorry. Can't even do that. You're right. I can't even sell that. I didn't want Tim Hardaway. Didn't.
Come on, brother. Come on, brother. You don't have to do this with me. Now I have a question. Because you mentioned that the rumors popped up that it was Toronto and Atlanta. Mm-hmm. When you heard Atlanta, did you feel a shiver up your back?
Honestly, no, because Atlanta has been like a stalking horse of us for the last 3 years at deadlines. And I know the team feels a little differently. I think they feel differently about Clint Capella than most of the NBA does. I think they would have been happy to, like, if things worked out, I think they would have been happy for him to be like part of the deal. I think the issue is they weren't looking. They were like, Clint Capella has always been somebody that Atlanta was trying to get rid of for several deadlines. They've gone back and forth on the Okongwu versus Capella, who's going to start. Okongwu flashes, then he gets hurt, and they've done this endless cycle that once used to have John Collins mixed in it too. They were just all on the block all the time. Oh, what a time. Yeah, it didn't scare me that much. I know the team like values Capella a little bit, but I don't see him paying a premium for Bogdanovic because of just like the outlook of the team, where he'd fit on our roster. Like, he's a bench guy for us, honestly. Like, if Herb's healthy and Trey's playing, you can't pay like a first round pick for Bogdanovic to get him here to be your 7th or 8th guy. That's a cool prospect, but that's like a thing a finishing team does. Like a team that is like right at the cusp of a title, like adds that as the last piece. Like Cleveland messing around for DeAndre Hunter is like a similar thing. Like, hey, can we upgrade this spot to make our already great thing a little bit better? So yeah, I was just glad that another team was around. That's it. I was glad another team was around, because a few weeks ago, I was worried there was no market, because that is what the recent past has shown me, is that there's not very much. So the fact that there was more than one team in there, yeah.
Now, here's the other thing, too, that I've just thought about as we talk about the return that the Pelicans got. I think there is a world where returns are going to look different. You're still going to get people to get the big hauls, but that's mainly going to be dictated on kind of the desperation of the team that's needed. And so I feel like it's always interesting to watch how people will like combine or move pieces around. Like, what do you mean Dallas couldn't get this pick, but the Lakers gave up this pick to get Mark Williams? Well, yeah, because they absolutely desperately needed a big in a different context. I think this trade and the return here is a salute to Trey Murphy III more than anything else. And so when you look at it on its face, I'm going to make the joke later. I'm so sorry, Adam and Pelicans fans. I will remind you consistently that you did trade Brandon Ingram for Kelly Olynyk.
All right.
But what this is a question we've had. We've talked about this, and like, what do you need if you're the New Orleans Pelicans? What player do you need? And essentially, if you're saying, Brandon Ingram, we appreciate you, thank you for your service, it's Trey Murphy time, then you remember you also have Herb Jones. And so if you're building that plus Zion, you have CJ. Obviously, you won't have DeJounte for a hot minute. Hope he heals and recovers. But you're basically saying we have the people that will grow into that. We're not looking for all of that back. Could you have maybe wanted some younger pieces potentially? I would understand that thought process, but at the same time, you have Jordan Hawkins. You have pieces that can develop. You have what some had called the rookie of the year at some point in time this season. I'm not sure if anyone on this podcast had done that.
Damn it.
We sure about that? No. So I mean, I think that's where it gets interesting. And so I think you essentially are hoping and moving and saying, nope, this is the direction. This is the guy. This is the other guy. This is where we're moving. We got Zion, and we want Kelly Olynyk next to Zion. And that's part is where I'm intrigued. And I think the biggest thing is like if you're the Pelicans, versatility big wise. And Kelly Olynyk still move. But that's the other part. Like you could still move him in the offseason or next year. But we stick with the theory that he stays. You have a big that can roll and develop. You have Kelly Olynyk. You got a little nice mixture. Got some different pieces. Like I'm intrigued by that. But if there's disappointed by just what it looks like on the face, you got to remember who you got. Like if you've spent the last year saying Trey Murphy is the prize and Trey Murphy has been the prize, well, you traded BI for Trey Murphy.
And look, I think if we look at the last 3-4 games, we have 40-point bombs. We have a couple of 40-point bombs and a 32-point bomb on insane efficiency. And Trey, like we've talked about it a ton, but it deserves repeating. It's the singular bright spot of the team. And I'm still going to say Yves Missi is still a bright spot. I think there are things that he's very, very good at. And when the role was contained, it was good. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. You don't get to scoff at every single Missi positive. No, the dude's got incredible role timing. Like incredible role timing and instincts around the basket as a finisher. My issue is strength overwhelmingly. Give me a year or so, bulk the dude up so that when he gets when guys are bumping into him, he doesn't just bounce off of them. And he's going to finish over guys. He's going to be lob threat guy. And that's important to have in that rotation with those guys. But you saw as soon as Zion came back that there's a fit issue with a big that can't go to the corner, that can't, play pretty far out the dunker spot. Like he's a roll guy. He's a screen and roll guy. And that doesn't work so much if you can't pick and pop, but you know who can. Kelly Olynyk. So it's interesting. I think he's a better fit with Zion if he does stay, and if you could end up seeing him start. But don't you scoff at Yves Missi like he's just some throwaway. Like he's just some dude, just some guy. He's just gonna whatever. No, the kid's impressive, and he's gonna get stronger, and he's gonna yam on people like Zach Edey, and I'm gonna keep bringing him up. But there are obviously things to work on. So
no, wait, hold on. Before we get to it,
we don't have
no. Do you see the power of a bit? One slight scoff delivered that promo. Here's the thing. I love Yves Missi, and I think he's going to be really good. The problem is Zion is also a roller and needs the ball in his hands.
Yes.
Like
yes.
Missi hit a sky hook over Jokic yesterday. Like he's going to be just fine. I think this may open him up. If he's going to do that with the bench, that's going to be fantastic. And then if I could just add one more thing about Trey Murphy. Back-to-back 40-point games.
You made that one face at me, and it sent me all the way into Missi land.
Yeah. That's the power of the pod. You got to do it for the content. So back 40-point games for Trey Murphy, making a whole bunch of threes, fantastic. You know what I loved? 9 assists. 9 assists against the Denver Nuggets. Oh, you guys are not happy that I did that to you last game. You're showing more attention to me, whether it's bigs being up the level, whether it's a drop, turn the corner, find Zion, make plays. That is a very positive sign, because if he has the aggression, he has the scoring, and now defenses have to adjust, and he's ready for that moment, that's key. It's the question I always have with Tyler Hero. He's figured it out a little bit more this year, but the arc of a guard, wing, ball player, scorer, you have to do enough to make defenses sit down in the morning and say, hey, what are we going to do about this guy? And then they're going to come up with something for you, and you have to have a counter for that to be able to make them pay and still do all the other stuff. That's the trickiest part. That's the part where I always say, I don't know if y'all appreciated Brandon Ingram enough for the moments when he did figure that out, when he played so lights out that defenses were like, not you, Brandon Ingram. I can pass a little bit. And oh boy, just throwing it out there. Continue.
Yep. And I'm going to throw a little bit of a dart at Brandon in response. The thing we always battled with is the processing speed, because there were sometimes he's locked in, and as soon as you cross half court, he touches the ball and he just goes. And those were the times when he had the immense success, was finding skip passes in the corner and things like that. Like, there were these times when he was locked in. See, I went from slightly negative to now here's the positive. So he had those moments where he went hyper speed, and you felt like he knew everything that was happening on the floor before it happened. And then there were these other times where we got locked into ISO ball, where it was like dribble, set my guy up. I think I might back off and shoot over him. I might try to go around him. I'm not really sure. 14 seconds is gone. I'm going to take 2 steps forward and raise up. It was the duality of man there, but the good times were really, really good, to the point where, like, back in the day when we had the Phoenix series, we were like, this guy, throw the max at him, and he told us no. We were like, throw the early extension at that guy, lock him in. And then we waffled back and forth, and the Zion thing is not a great fit, and they never play together. I probably need to read the Christian Clark tweet real quick to just like make it evident exactly how much they didn't play together. So 5.5 seasons. So this is from former host of the pod, Christian Clark, now writing about the Dallas Mavericks for The Athletic. In their first 5.5 seasons as teammates, Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram played in 154 games together. That's played in. That does not mean finished, because that number is even lower if you say finished the game together. That is a tough scene. And yeah, Trey, back to Trey. We're going to loop it back. Trey is succeeding. Like, we hear about wings every year. There is a 6'8" plus guy every year who is a prospect level dude that has like a singular skill that we know about. And then we mythologize the rest. And we're like, he could be the next like all-star level 3-and-D, or he's going to develop the handle, and he's going to drive on guys, and he's going to be that number 2 guy. And it almost never happens. Like, most of those guys do not pan out that way. Trey has actually had a leap. And I think a lot of people here would say, oh yeah, we saw this coming. Like, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm a huge fan of Trey Murphy and everything he's done for the last few years. There's no evidence in a game or on tape anywhere before this year that the downhill pace, strength, decision-making was just going to appear, and that the handle was going to jump from one dribble sidestep stuff to I can keep the ball going downhill around a guy. That those things, like, there has been a leap with the handle. There's been a leap with the confidence moving downhill, both for himself, finishing strong through defenders, and creating for others in the space that he collapses. There's no way to say that like a thing like that is just going to all come at the same time. But for Trey Murphy, it looks like it has. And with that, the shooting aggression has increased, which was my one criticism. My one criticism that I've ever had is like, you're so good. If you have daylight, put that thing in the air. And it was like, we'd get a hard closeout and he wouldn't shoot it. That has slowly gone away, and now it is gone. It appears gone. So yeah, clear the deck. Trey Murphy time. Trey Murphy Zion time. We have a conundrum now, because we will not have a point guard to start the year. We will have, Jose and them boys as of right now. Maybe Brandon Boston, soon to be converted to a real contract. That'll happen. We just cleared in the tax decks. One thing it did for us, Brandon Boston going to become the memory of BI. BI left, but did he really? No. You're gonna see little spots. But actually, like, it's easier to enjoy Brandon Boston because he's a lower usage player.
That feels like CJ McCollum. Sure, by the way.
Well, I don't want him in primary creation roles. I don't want it.
Here's the thing. He doesn't have to be in primary creation roles. One, this allows him to have the ball more in his hands. Zion does, and Trey Murphy does. And the ability around that. Like, I feel like here's the thing. You need CJ to have touches for him to get into a rhythm. There's a reason why the Denver Nuggets had Aaron Gordon guarding CJ McCollum. I'm just going to throw that out there. So don't be concerned. This now means CJ is going to dribble the ball every time and run high pick and roll for 17 seconds and go easy. There's more to CJ McCollum than that. You have Zion, you have Trey running things, you have Herb Jones usage. Like, you have things that will happen. So just,
we've just seen a little bit of this movie before. And especially as CJ has aged, the one big relieving thing of DeJounte coming in was that you had the guy that can come in and immediately set up the play and start the initial action right off the bat, make a fast decision, make a fast second decision, even if it was the elbow pull up. Like, we just had a faster pace and a faster initial processing and movement on the floor. I'm a little afraid. That's the thing I'm afraid of, is that too much of the creating the point guard in the aggregate. It's a thing the Pelicans have tried to do for a few years now, and it has been a struggle because it's hard to stay organized when you have three different guys who are not playing like all NBA ball. Like, we don't have a Joker out there. We don't have a Luka out there that can just like know exactly what's going to happen based off of every breath they take. So when you're trying to create it out of Trey and Herb and Zion and they're taking turns running different things and they're more comfortable in certain situations, I think it just exposes your offense to more risk. And that's what makes me nervous. I have to acknowledge that Trey Murphy uptick in the handles, uptick in the drives does make me feel a little more comfortable. It does. But I'm nervous. I'm nervous about the gap because it feels like it brings me back towards the bad stuff I saw a year and 2 years ago. From the point guard's position specifically. Bring that back. All right.
Gotta heal.
So Brandon Ingram's in Toronto. We have our Pelicans set essentially for the year. We're waiting. We're in a countdown clock. It is 8:45 a.m. We have a handful of hours left before we find out whether or not Bruce Brown is remaining a Pelican. I think it's probably more likely that he remains and that the money just comes off the books than it is that he gets removed. Just because roster slots and everything. Right now, Bruce Brown is essentially, his contract for next season. His contract amount currently is about the difference between you and the first apron next year. So that's intriguing. And the thing we haven't even talked about, and the thing that's like starting to get kind of evident, we're in the Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper game. We have entered that arena. We have capped Zion minutes. He is missing half of every back-to-back. I think Carlo Makovich started last night as a power forward. Like, we are messing around with stuff. So I think that's the other thing that I need to comfort myself with. We just talked about the point guard thing. Totally in the realm of possibility that I'm adding a Flag or a Harper or, my guy and yours, Kasparis Yakachonis. Maybe I'm adding one of those three to this. And every one of those dudes is competent on ball and seems to have like a nice base I'd like to work with. Two of them are straight up legit point guards. Cooper Flag is like the processor of this draft. So, hey, granted, the Hornets did deal Mark Williams away to make sure they got worse.
Now, here's the thing, though. The New Orleans Pelicans have done what I was not sure that they could do, and they have put themselves in a position to where Adam is going to find this draft board and bring it out soon. The Washington Wizards are 9-41.
They will be the worst.
The Charlotte Hornets are 12-36. The New Orleans Pelicans are 12-39. The worst record in the Western Conference, and a lot closer to the two teams I mentioned than before. So,
with the worst remaining schedule.
And that schedule is full of those back-to-back tennis matches, baseball games, whatever you want to call it.
Baseball weekend series.
So that part's going to be interesting. Can I ask a Bruce Brown question?
Yeah, fire away.
What's the likelihood? Because I'm seeing a lot of people #assume that it's just a buyout. And I'm like, are the Pelicans gonna do that? That doesn't feel
The
like the
Pelicans spend money to buy
Yeah.
a guy out when he can just stay. What
Yeah.
franchise are you watching?
So that's where I'm like, okay.
No.
Yeah.
That screams not anybody from New Orleans saying that.
No, it's not. I'm literally I'm scrolling. I'm just like, I was like, that
Yeah.
doesn't ever seem like an option. So the reason
No.
why I said, hey, I think they trade him is because of that.
Hey, look, if you're going to talk about the financial practices of New Orleans franchises, I would point you to his 22 or 23 million just falling off the books at the end of the year and them looking at that as the win.
Yeah, expiring contract.
It is not going to be a buyout. That is hilarious. Pay that man cash to go away. That is hilarious. I think Bruce could want that. I could see Bruce wanting that, but it's really hard to see. I mean, look, you know what? Depending on what he'd be willing to take to get bought out, if he really is motivated to get out and go sign like a minimum with Denver or whatever, which I need to look at. I don't know who's on aprons and whatnot, because there's new rules about who can sign buyout players. I think you can't sign them if you're over the second apron, and I haven't looked at Denver recently. That has been the place he's been like rumored to want to get back to, and Calvin Booth has wanted to get him back. So if he was very motivated to the point where he was making them a huge deal, where like they are paying an absolute nothing relative to the money that he's owed for the rest of the year, then okay. Like, but it's not, if he wants 70% of what he's owed to get bought out to go where he's going, no, it would require a lot of Bruce Brown motivation to get bought out. I don't think they would be opposed to the player getting off the roster because of the prospects of next year's draft. But I do think they would be opposed to handing out money. Interesting topic, but that's funny. Yeah, just automatic buyouts in New Orleans. When have you ever heard that before? Name the buyouts in Pelicans and Hornets history. Doesn't happen. All right. Where do we leave off? Is it time to talk about what happened with Luka yet? Should we slide over and just have a quick little convo about what the hell just happened in Dallas? And I don't want to do the thing. Everybody did the thing. There's plenty of articles. There are plenty of video pieces. You can go to a million places and hear how terrible the Dallas Mavericks are and how terrible it all is. And yes, I have questions about Nico Harrison and his Nike affiliations. I have all of those. I have questions about all of the practices, all the things everybody's already said. There's nothing new there. Where I think this is intriguing is look at what the Pelicans have gone through with and for Zion Williamson since entering the league, and how loud the bad and the unprofessional has been. And they are still married to this guy. We got a little close. We'll never really know what happened with the Scoot Henderson summer. We'll never really know. There was a lot of rumor that it was Zion. There was a lot of rumor that it was Brandon Ingram. There were definitely conversations. They got so far that they met with Scoot's agent. We had his medicals. We were close, which, by the way, all the people that ranted against that right after, go check out Scoot now. Go check out Scoot now that Portland has like cleared the way and made him make more sense on that team. Scoot's hooping. Everybody threw away the Scoot stock. I told Christian not to give up on his Scoot stock. I didn't give up on mine. That penny stock to the moon. To the moon right now. Dude's hooping. He is, and the biggest thing, real quick, when we'll get off of Scoot real fast, he is punishing the open space at the three-point line. When he dribbles forward and they sag off because they're trying to protect against that drive, that man is stepping back behind the three-point line, and he is nailing that shot. He is punishing the open space, which for him is a delight because the jump shot was the scariest part. And also, in his rookie year, he just seemed to be playing at 100 miles per hour at all times with no alternating speed. And that was not good because you're very small. So, yeah. New Orleans is married to their dude. New Orleans is hung with Zion through all of this stuff up and down. And part of it is like force of market. I think it'd be difficult to ever get I've talked about this before. I think it's difficult to get the return, and this is probably the Luka thing too. This is at play there. It is difficult to get the return that is needed to feel good about that player leaving. And clearly, Nico feels a certain way about Anthony Davis, where this is approximately the best he thought he was going to do. And he pulled the trigger. And meanwhile, Pelicans are still a Zion team. I hear it a little bit. We have some, maybe an emergency, maybe some criminal activities out there in New York. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's interesting to foil those two against each other. It's a lot easier to bail on Zion. It's written into his contract right now that they can bail on him after any season with the weirdest clause that I'm still shocked we didn't get sued over. The idea that you can add weight plus body fat to make this random number and say if he exceeds that he gets cut in the offseason. That's wild. I'm going to keep bringing it up because it's the most random thing, and I don't know how he signed that. But yeah, that's the thing. Dallas did the thing that New Orleans is scared to do. They gave up on the guy. They got away from the guy. They moved on to the next guy. But I'll at least throw out there, Dallas is going to be good this year. Dallas is going to be really good this year. They shortened the window. Luka's probably an untradeable guy. At that age, that many All-NBAs, as talented he is, you probably just can't do it for anything. What they got makes sense on the court. What they got is probably really, really good to finish this regular season and might even give them a title run. It's possible. But it's interesting to contrast to the very public. All the stuff about Luka is kind of muffled and it's happening in the background. Oh, he doesn't work out. And remember when the assistant GM took that beer out of his hands and everything. All notable. Zion stuff's been a lot more public. It's been a lot more visible. And they're still married. Just intrigued.
To keep with this theme, it's a little easier to maintain the marriage when you do have the agreement that will allow you to end it whenever you do need and protect yourself. I don't know what they call that at all. Secondly, you just stopped paying rent for the other person that you love. So it's a little easier to do that now. Third, what happens if they make the choice? It gets interesting. All this world we live in, basketball wise, gets real tricky because I think people are going to make a lot of decisions a lot quicker than they had used to. I think the windows are shorter. I think you got to be ready for everything these days. I'll put it that way.
I think this is the wildest deadline ever. And I definitely saw Nikias' tweet about somebody should swoop in for Zion. I definitely saw it.
Any thoughts? I didn't say that.
Yeah, Nikias threw it out there, and I was like, I went and posted a Hey Arnold tomato throwing gif, and he said darn, naturally. The problem will always be, it's the Saquon Barkley thing. I can't watch him succeed somewhere else because I know how good the good can be. And if that's my problem here, the problem with that with Luka is he might win 3 titles. That's a real thing. The upside of him being somewhere else is he might be holding a lot of trophies. It's very, he will be in the MVP conversation every single year. I find it just really, it's interesting to talk about. Is there a solution for it? No, it's just a divergence of approaches on similar case studies. That sounded way too intellectual. But it's interesting that Zion stays with the Pelicans. It's a Zion team. But like you said, if it's possible, maybe Trey continues to reveal himself and they get the guy in the top 3. They get the top 3 draft pick and that kid turns out to be really good. Maybe they're feeling a little different in a year. Who knows? Maybe it's a even more of a rebuild and something else happens. I don't know. I am very happy with how Zion returned from the injury. and that they're bubble wrapping him and that he's in lockstep with them. Like, I'll point back to this. Zion coming back from the injury and not playing the back-to-backs and then being asked about it and saying, yes, I am not playing back-to-backs. I would like to play. However, the team and the numbers suggest that it is a bad idea for me to do so, and I'm going to roll with them on that. We have never heard Zion Williamson say the same thing as the team in that respect. We have never, in the last 6 years, had them in lockstep on how to take care of his body. And he's playing well when he plays. So right now, for the moment, we're happy. Right now, for the moment, we're going to enjoy Zion. We're going to enjoy Trey Murphy. We're gonna enjoy a little Eve Measy. I'm looking forward to some Olynyk pick and pop. I'm looking forward to a little Zion roll, and they bail, and they two guys dive with Zion because they're really worried about that rim pressure, and it just leaves a little air for Olynyk, who has that jumper and just puts it up. Because that's not a thing. That's not a thing we have. And we saw Tice get put in that position a ton of times. Hey, they bailed on you. What are you going to do? I don't want to shoot this. This is not me. We saw Tice in the corner a lot, and those didn't go good either, which number one bet. He's going to show up in an OKC game at some point before Chet returns, and the first corner three he takes, he's absolutely going to make. Just calling it now. Daniel Tice will make his first corner three that he gets with OKC. He's going to make the damn thing because that's how this happens. OKC gets dudes who aren't supposed to make threes that will just make threes when it's ironic for us.
Okay.
It's a Josh Giddey thing mostly. Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams just don't miss threes against us. So I'll just have that with me for forever. All right. So we're on the lookout for Bruce Brown maybe getting redirected. I would guess not. I think Olynyk likely to stay. The fit makes sense, and I don't think there's a lot of other rational shooting big options. And Olynyk's got a little bit of creation stuff too that comes with him, even if he is older and more banged up. And we got the big move. We are in the next era. We are a certified tank that I think a few weeks ago we weren't sure that they were going to be able to be. We are a certified tank with two primary dudes that we are strapping everything onto, and we're wrapping them in bubble wrap the rest of the way. Hopefully, we're going to watch Trey Murphy drop 6 more 40 balls on the way. Shout out to Aaron Wiggins. I will never forget your 40 ball, Aaron Wiggins. I just want you to know that. I will never forget, just because wacko trades happened, that you had that 40 burger and that Bam Adebayo hit that game winner that night. That's what I'm going to remember the night of the Luka trade, while everybody else does the Luka thing. Which actually, before we get out of here, how did the Luka trade occur for you? Because
I was asleep.
Perfect.
I watched the Royal Rumble. I went to sleep. I woke up at 6:30 next morning. I was like, oh, weird. It's kind of crazy. I went back to sleep.
I've never quite had a moment like that since I've been an NBA fan, in terms of how it played out for me. It required an apology to my wife, and yeah, nothing terrible. I'm on the verge of falling asleep, and the phone buzzes, and I'm like, what could this be? And immediately, and the funniest part of this will always be that we all just immediately assumed Shams was hacked. And universally, in the first 5 minutes of the first post going up, we're like, there's no way this happened. This man is hacked. He's going to launch a meme coin next. We to the moon. That's what's happening here. He's hacked. Then the next tweet is, this is real, period. And then more details. And we're like, well, but if he was hacked, that's what you would say. Immediately, I end up FaceTiming our mutual friend, Jeremy, because I knew I needed my one wacko that I knew was going to be awake and that I knew was going to answer the phone. And so I apologized to my wife and say, I got to go. She's like, why? I said, Luka Doncic is a Laker. And she's like, okay. And I blitzed out of my bedroom. And me and Jeremy just stared at each other and went for like a solid maybe 10 minutes. We're just in disbelief, in complete disbelief that it happened. And then it's the text, and then we rush back into the watch party, and then the Kai shows up like a little bit later. We're all freaking out already, and then the Kai shows up with the filth, Florin filth. What is this? And we just listened to him react to it for a little bit, and then we all just kind of collectively looked at each other after an hour had passed, and some people stayed in there. Me and Jeremy were like, "All right, we just kind of lost our minds for an hour. I think I need to go to bed now." And then we went back, but like the world just collapsed on what the hell just happened. And it was text messages, FaceTime, watch party. I just needed to get near people who were reacting to this at the same time, because it was just like, what happened? Why did the Lakers have their next era? How did they keep failing upwards? How does this happen?
Yeah, I'll sleep. Well, I'm so happy y'all had that experience. I don't know nothing about nothing. I could speak. I have a question for you though, because I was scrolling and I saw a moment where it says that everything that the New Orleans Pelicans
I know what you're gonna say. Yeah,
for Anthony Davis has now exited the building, and I want to ask that, does that mean, because you finished the story, does that mean that the curse is lifted? Does that mean that the nightmare is over? Does that mean that the New Orleans Pelicans can now live their best lives? Is this the reason why the Pelicans are the worst team in the Western Conference? Because they finally have done all the things they were asked to do to shake themselves of this move. Have they now been replaced? The Chris Paul Lakers trade, has it now been replaced in historic purposes? Are you now refreshed as a franchise? Is this the moment that New Orleans Pelicans will remember as the moment Papa Shango let them live?
Have they exorcised the demons? No. I don't think anybody here feels any better about our luck right now. If you know what we'll do is we'll do the cycle of happiness. What this is actually like, it's the larger story of the NBA. We are going to play our role in winning the draft lottery again and getting another guy, number one from Duke, coming in. We're going to just keep playing this role. A guy from Duke or a guy from Kentucky goes number one, lands in New Orleans. We'll get 6 years out of it. What do we get after that? I don't know. But we'll get 6 years out of it for sure. No, I don't think the curse is lifted. I will lie to you in a few months. If we win the draft lottery in a little while here, I'll lie to you then and tell you the curse is lifted then.
Okay. We'll bookmark it.
Yeah, that will be a lie.
All right. And this is the last time. Obviously you got trade deadline bonanza, so I can only get one of these off for the rest of the year. Would you take Nurkic back to get rid of Bruce Brown?
No. Stop. No. Why? Why do we always have to end this way? Why does he always have to do this? Damn it. No. The cap savings are better than Nurkic. Done. Especially Nurkic. We hate him here. Never forget 2018. We literally, our favorite image in Pelicans history is Drew Holiday pointing down at Nurkic like he's a little sad boy. Or it might have been Zach Collins, but actually, either way, we hate Nurkic. Hate him. And yeah, so no. Shout out to Companion Pod, our friends at In the Know. In a few hours, I'm gonna go hop over there for a live stream with the aforementioned Jeremy that I was FaceTiming with. We're gonna do a little buddy pod, a little buddy live stream to finalize the deadline, do a lot of this talk, do a little bit more expansive NBA talk. Their pod likes to talk a lot more about like the salaries and the numbers and the future cap and the seconds, and I'm not about that stuff. I leave that to them. But I'll go nerd out a little bit over there and hang out with my buddy. And Steve will keep throwing proverbial NBA player tomatoes at me like Yusuf Nurkic, because this is apparently what he's going to do to me every single time. He'll find a new way. It won't be this now because the deadline is passing, but it'll be something else. Maybe it'll be future trades that he'll start throwing at me, or like future demise of players on the roster that he'll throw at me. But this has been From the Wing. Steve coming at you from New York. Initial reaction, Brandon Ingram, now a Toronto Raptor. Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk are New Orleans Pelicans. Daniel Tice is a Thunder. And look for our guy Brandon Boston to be getting his contract now. It is time. And maybe Bruce Brown gets a buyout. Really would depend on exactly how much he's willing to bend to leave. I don't think they'd be opposed to the player leaving. I think they'd be opposed to paying him a lot of money to do so. So that's been From the Wing. Join us next time. We are inching ever closer to the draft board. The big board's coming. It's like right off screen. It's just going to slide in here. I know Steve's really, really jazzed up about it. He gave us a thumbs up for the audio listeners. Y'all have a good one. Be safe.